Most people spend their lives running from their worst moments, hiding them, burying them, hoping nobody finds out. Eminem did the opposite. He took the most painful, humiliating, shameful parts of his life, the abusive childhood, the absent father, the volatile marriage, the poverty, the addiction, and he put all of it on record, named names, spared no one, least of all himself. And he became one of the best-selling music artists in history by doing it. But here's the question nobody asks about Eminem. If your entire career is built on your pain, what happens when you start to heal? If the wound is the source of the power, do you dare let it close? And what does it cost a person to keep every wound open on purpose for 25 years because the world keeps paying to watch them bleed? Let's do an icon recall. If this is your first time here, we look at the icons everyone celebrates and ask what it actually cost them to become that. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. This is not a video about whether Eminem is the greatest rapper of all time. People have argued that for decades. This is about something more useful. This is about the psychology of turning pain into fuel. Because Eminem is maybe the clearest example in modern culture of a person who took trauma and converted it directly into fuel, success, and identity. And that conversion is something a lot of us attempt in smaller ways. We turn our anger into ambition, our rejection into drive, our worst experiences into the engine that pushes us forward. Eminem did it at the highest possible level, and his story shows you both what that strategy can achieve and what it quietly takes from you in return. To understand the fuel, you have to understand the fire it came from. Marshall Bruce Mathers III was born in 1972 in St. Joseph, Missouri. His father abandoned the family when Marshall was a baby. He later said that when he tried to write letters to his father as a child, they came back unopened. That's the first wound. A father who didn't just leave but who actively refused contact. A rejection with no explanation and no possibility of repair. His mother struggled to hold down a job for more than a few months at a time, and the family moved constantly between Missouri and Detroit, often living in public housing. Marshall later said he changed schools 2 or 3 times a year. Think about what that does to a kid. You never build stable friendships. You're always the new one, always the outsider, always starting over in a place where everyone already has their groups, their history, their belonging, and you have none of it. And because he was constantly the new kid and small and poor, he became a target. He was bullied severely. One incident with a schoolmate left him hospitalized with a head injury serious enough that he later wrote a song about it. This was a childhood defined by instability, rejection, and the constant sense of being an outcast. And that feeling, the feeling of being on the outside looking in, would become one of the central engines of his entire career. He found one thing that made him feel powerful: words. He started rapping at 14. And in the Detroit hip-hop scene, he faced a completely different kind of barrier. He was a white kid trying to succeed in an art form created by and dominated by black artists in a city where his skin color made him an immediate outsider all over again. So he did the only thing he knew how to do. He proved himself the hard way. He entered battle rap competitions, standing in front of hostile crowds who expected him to fail, and he out-rapped everyone. He turned the thing that made him an outsider into part of the act. He addressed it head-on, before anyone else could use it against him. There's a scene in his film 8 Mile that captures this perfectly, and it's based on his real technique. In the final battle, his character does something no battle rapper does. He raps about himself. He lists every single thing his opponent could possibly attack him for. He's white, he's poor, he lives in a trailer, his life is a mess. He says it all first, and by the time he hands the microphone to his opponent, there's nothing left to say. He's taken every weapon out of the other person's hands by turning them on himself. That was Eminem's entire strategy for surviving the world. Say the worst thing about yourself first, louder than anyone else, so that no one can use it to hurt you. His pain wasn't just fuel, it was armor. If he was the one holding it, nobody else could stab him with it. But here's where the story turns. In 1995, Marshall's daughter Haley was born, and this changed everything. Because now the poverty wasn't just his problem. It was hers. He was working at a restaurant, getting fired, living in his mother's mobile home, trying to raise a newborn with almost no money. He has said that everything he did from that point forward was for Haley, to give her the childhood he never had, to make sure she never felt the instability and lack that defined his own early years. His first album, Infinite, released in 1996, was a commercial failure. Barely anyone heard it. And imagine that moment. You've poured everything into this one shot. You have a baby daughter depending on you, and it fails. Most people quit there. The dream dies and reality takes over, and you go get a stable job and you tell yourself it wasn't meant to be. Marshall did the opposite. He got angrier, and out of that anger, he created something new. An alter ego. A character named Slim Shady who could say anything, do anything, and feel nothing. Slim Shady was everything Marshall was afraid to be out loud. Violent, unfiltered, gleefully offensive, completely free of shame. And here's the psychological genius of it. By inventing Slim Shady, Marshall found a way to weaponize his pain instead of being crushed by it. Everything that had hurt him, the poverty, the rejection, the rage, the instability, could now be poured into this character who transforms suffering into provocation. Think about how clever that actually is as a survival mechanism. Marshall Mathers was a person with real shame, real fear, real vulnerability. Those things are heavy. They slow you down. They make you a target. But Slim Shady felt none of it. Slim Shady could take the most shameful, painful facts of Marshall's life and say them with a smirk, as a joke, as an attack. The character was a container. Marshall could pour his agony into Slim Shady, and what came out the other side wasn't a victim's confession. It was a weapon. The same facts that could have destroyed him, the abuse, the poverty, the humiliation, became ammunition the moment they passed through the alter ego. That's not just artistry. That's a person figuring out how to survive their own life by splitting themselves in two. And the deeper you look, the more you see how deliberate the conversion was. The Slim Shady LP, released in 1999, made him famous almost overnight. And then, the Marshall Mathers LP, released in 2000, became the fastest-selling rap album in history at the time, selling over 1.7 million copies in its first week. But what's remarkable isn't the sales, it's what the songs were actually about. He wasn't rapping about wealth or status or fantasy, he was rapping about his real life, his actual mother, his actual absent father, his actual wife, his actual daughter. Real names, real events, real pain. He wrote a song addressed to his mother so brutal that she filed a defamation lawsuit against him for over $10 million. In one of his biggest hits, he rapped that his mother did more drugs than he did. The case was eventually settled, but think about what that means. He was so committed to using his real pain as material that he was willing to say things about his own mother, on record, for the entire world to hear, that would end their relationship and end up in court. And it went further than that. He wrote songs imagining killing his wife, Kim. One of them was literally titled Kim, a violent, screaming track about murdering the mother of his child. It was so disturbing that Kim reportedly attempted suicide after hearing it. Their relationship was volatile for years. They married, divorced, remarried, and divorced again. And through all of it, he kept putting the rawest, ugliest details of that relationship directly into his music. This is the part of the fuel strategy nobody wants to talk about. When your pain is your material, the people in your life become material too. Their privacy, their dignity, their feelings, all of it becomes raw supply for the work. Eminem's honesty made him one of the greatest artists of his generation. But that same honesty had casualties. Real people with real feelings, who never signed up to have their worst moments turned into platinum records. And then there was Haley. She was the one exception, the one person Eminem's pain fuel never turned on. Instead, she became the reason for all of it. He rapped about her constantly, but always with love. In the song Mockingbird, he speaks directly to her, explaining the poverty and chaos of her early childhood, apologizing for the instability, promising her it would get better. Haley was the proof that the fuel was going somewhere, that all the rage was building towards something, a stable life for the daughter he was determined not to fail the way his own parents failed him. But the treadmill of turning pain into fuel has a cost that eventually comes due. By the mid-2000s, Eminem was one of the biggest artists on the planet. He'd won Grammys, he'd won an Academy Award for the song Lose Yourself from the film 8 Mile, a semi-autobiographical movie about his own come-up. He had conquered everything, and it nearly killed him. Because here's what happens when your identity is built entirely on pain and rage. Success doesn't resolve it. Success just removes the original reason for it. Eminem had spent his whole life fighting to escape poverty and prove the world wrong. And once he'd done that, once there was nothing left to fight, the engine that had powered him started to consume him instead. His best friend, the rapper Proof, was shot and killed in 2006. His drug use, which had been escalating for years, spiraled. And in December 2007, Eminem nearly died from an accidental methadone overdose. He has said he was taking a staggering number of pills. His body shut down, He came very close to not surviving. He later described the mechanics of it in a way that reveals exactly how the trap works. He couldn't sleep. He couldn't function. The pills were the only thing that quieted the noise. But the noise was the same noise that had driven him his entire life. The restlessness, the rage, the inability to ever feel like he'd done enough. For decades, that noise had been productive. It made albums. It won Grammys. And then, at the peak, with nothing left to prove, the same noise that built him had nowhere to go. So it turned inward. The drive that had always pushed outward, at rivals, at critics, at the world, started pushing against him instead. And the only way he'd learned to quiet it was to numb it completely. That's the hidden cost of the fuel strategy laid completely bare. The pain that made him didn't disappear when he got famous. It didn't get resolved by the Grammys or the money or the fame. It just kept burning, with less and less to burn until it nearly took him with it. When you build your entire self on your wounds, healing feels like losing your identity. And that makes recovery one of the hardest things you'll ever attempt, because you're not just fighting an addiction. You're fighting the belief that without your pain, you're nothing. Here's why this matters to you. I'll be honest about why this episode is hard for me to make, because I've used this strategy and I only half understand whether it saved me or cost me. There was a stretch of my life where I was running almost entirely on the desire to prove specific people wrong, people who'd counted me out. And it worked. I accomplished things in that period that I'm still proud of. But when I got to the other side of it, I noticed something unsettling. I didn't feel victorious. I felt empty, because the whole time I hadn't been running toward anything. I'd been running away from a version of myself I was terrified of being. And when I finally outran him, I realized I'd never actually decided who I wanted to become instead. I only knew who I didn't want to be. That's the hollow center of pain fuel. It can tell you what to run from. It can never tell you where to go. You have probably used this strategy in your own life, whether you realized it or not. Almost everyone has. Think about the breakup that made you completely rebuild yourself, the rejection that lit a fire under you, the person who told you you'd never amount to anything, whose voice you still hear when you're working late, still trying to prove them wrong. That's pain as fuel. And it works. It genuinely works. It can drive you to accomplish things that comfort never could. But Eminem's story shows you the trap hidden inside that strategy. When your success is built on your pain, you develop a subtle, dangerous incentive to never heal. Because healing means losing your fuel. You start to unconsciously protect the wound. Keep it fresh. Return to it. Because on some level you believe it's the source of everything you've achieved. You define yourself by the thing that hurt you. And you stay angry long after the anger has stopped serving you, because you don't know who you'd be without it. The question Eminem's life poses is one of the hardest questions a person can face. Can you keep the drive without keeping the wound? Can you accomplish things without needing an enemy, a rejection, a source of rage to push against? Or is your entire identity so wrapped around your pain that letting it heal feels like a kind of death? And the way Eminem answered that question is the most important part of his story. He got sober. He has been sober since April of 2008. And staying sober meant he had to do the hardest thing a pain-fueled person can do. He had to learn to create without the chemical crutch, and eventually to live without needing the wound to stay open. His later music changed. Some of the rage cooled. He rapped about recovery, about his kids, about getting older, about the strange experience of surviving the very thing that made him. He didn't lose the drive, but he slowly stopped needing the self-destruction that had come attached to it. And the clearest proof of what the fuel was actually for is what happened to Haley. The daughter he raised in a mobile home with no money graduated from college with a 3.9 GPA, studying psychology. She built a stable, happy adult life. She got married. She had a child of her own, making Eminem a grandfather. Everything he rapped about wanting for her, the stability, the safety, the childhood he never had, she actually got. The fuel built something real after all. So the lesson of Eminem is not simply that pain can drive you. Everyone learns that eventually. The deeper lesson is about what comes after. The wound can start the fire. The rejection can light the engine. Your worst moments genuinely can become the fuel that pushes you towards something extraordinary. But at some point, if you want to survive your own success, you have to learn to run on something other than pain. You have to find a fuel that doesn't require you to keep bleeding. Eminem took the abandonment, the poverty, the rejection, the rage, everything that should have destroyed him, and he turned it into one of the most successful careers in music history. That's the miracle of the Fuel strategy. But he also nearly died from the very thing that made him. That's the cost. And the fact that he's still here, sober, a grandfather, still making music but no longer being consumed by it, is proof of the final, hardest lesson. The pain can start you, but it cannot be the thing that keeps you going. Not forever. At some point, you have to want to live more than you want to prove the world wrong. And learning that difference might be the hardest and most important thing any of us ever does. Eminem didn't just teach us about music. He taught us that your worst moments can become your greatest fuel. But he also taught us that fuel burns. And if you never learn to run on anything else, it will eventually burn you down to nothing. The trick isn't just lighting the fire. It's knowing when to stop feeding it. If this changed how you see Eminem, let me know in the comments. And if there's another icon you want remembered this way, not just for what they achieved, but for what it cost them, drop their name below. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. This is Recall Icon. Thank you for watching.